this is going to be the endocrine system for animals. So here we're talking about chordate, humans. So what are glands? Glands are where the hormones are made. The only difference in the glands in between male and female are in their gonads, which is sex glands. So we'll talk about that when we get up to it. Okay, so hormone glands are not ducted. They don't have tubes. They rely on a circulatory system, which is blood, to transport hormones. Exocrine glands, however, that's not in the endocrine system. It's just a comparison. Exocrine glands are ducted. They don't transport through blood. Okay, we're going to talk about pituitary gland. So the pituitary gland hangs down from the brain. It's right above the nose-mouth area, like above your palate. I don't know. It's hard to, whatever. It doesn't matter. So it is controlled by the hypothalamus, which is the piece of the brain in which it hangs down from. The hypothalamus produces tiny releasing factor hormones. It sends it down to the pituitary, and depending which releasing factor hormone it sent, the pituitary makes that type. Yeah, I'm going to read more and then I'll explain. Pituitary gland has two sections, the anterior and the posterior. The anterior makes the most hormones, and then the posterior doesn't make hormones. It has neurons from the hypothalamus that make other hormones. So the hypothalamus had made hormones, and the posterior has neurons from the hypothalamus that are going to store the hormones that the hypothalamus made. Yeah. Okay. That's the posterior. The anterior is where a lot of hormones are going to be made. Hormones run in your bloodstream, like I said before, but they only go into the cells with certain receptors. How does it know the receptor? It's based on the shape. Okay. Hypothalamus makes different hormones. So now we're really talking about the hypothalamus because it's the piece of the brain that the pituitary gland hangs down from. So it makes hormones. It's going to make 3 different types of hormones. One we talked about, which is the releasing factor, which will tell the pituitary gland which hormones to make. And then there's also 2 other ones. So it makes oxytocin, which helps with labor and nursing. And it makes antidiuretic hormone, which is helps store water so you don't pee it all out. And then it makes the releasing factor, which hormones that tell the pituitary gland which hormones to release. And I'm going to give an example. So let's say the hypothalamus releases TSH releasing factor. This TSH releasing factor will go into the pituitary gland, and it'll tell the pituitary gland to release TSH because the hypothalamus releases TSH releasing factor. It goes to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland sees the releasing factor, and it knows to make TSH. Okay, which is thyroid stimulating factor. We're going to talk about it more, but which goes to the thyroid gland, which releases thyroxine into your blood. The blood will eventually, after it goes throughout the body, go back to the hypothalamus, the blood does, and it'll see if you need more of all the hormones. But here, since we're talking about TSH, it'll see if you need more. It'll see the thyroxine levels, it'll see the TSH levels, it'll see all the hormone levels, and it'll see if you need more. Based on that, it'll either send more releasing factor, and it'll tell your pituitary gland to make more, or if you have enough, it won't do that. This follows what I kind of just said. That is a negative feedback mechanism. Basically, if I have enough of a hormone, your hypothalamus sees this and I will not make more. If I don't have enough of a hormone and I need this, the hypothalamus sees this and I'll make more. Other things that go through this are let's say hypothalamus releases growth hormone releasing factor, which tells the anterior pituitary gland to release growth hormones. Another example is the hypothalamus will release follicle stimulating hormone releasing factor, and that tells the anterior pituitary to release follicle stimulating hormone. So yeah, and that the blood will come back to the hypothalamus in the end, and the hypothalamus will see, do we need more hormones? And if it does, then the whole cycle will start again. That is all a negative feedback mechanism. Okay, now we're going to talk about hormones that the anterior pituitary gland makes. Obviously, it's going to be depending on if the hypothalamus tells it to, if it follows the negative feedback mechanism. Okay, so we're going to talk about TSH. We're going to talk about GH, which is growth hormone. We're talking about FSH, which is follicle stimulating hormone. We're going to talk about luteinizing hormone, which is LH. We're going to talk about adrenocorticotrophic hormone, which is ACTH. And we're talking about prolactin. Okay. So now we're going to be talking about follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, because they're both like part of the same thing, really. Okay, so we have this model of your uterus and then your fallopian tube, which is also known as your oviducts, and then you have 2 ovaries, and which, by the way, is a female gonad, which is your sex gland. Okay, so each ovary has like 200,000 compartments, and the compartments are called Graafian follicles. So altogether, you have like 400,000 Graafian follicles, because there's 2 ovaries. Each have 200,000. Okay, so each Graafian follicle has an immature egg called an ovum. Once you start menstruation, then once a month on your period, one of your ovaries, it'll switch off which ovary, one of the Graafian follicles in one of your ovaries will mature, and what's it called? What was I saying? Oh yeah, so the egg will mature, then the Graafian follicle will pop, and then you can become pregnant if there is sperm. Okay, so now where does this follicle stimulating hormone come in? So follicle stimulating hormone will bind to certain receptors that the ovaries have. So what's it called? And basically when it binds it tells your ovaries to mature your egg. That's what really follicle stimulating hormone does. Follicle stimulating hormone, again, it follows a negative feedback mechanism where hypothalamus will release FSH releasing factor to the anterior pituitary, which sees this releasing factor, and it'll make FSH, which goes through your blood to your ovaries, and it tells the ovaries to mature your egg, and then blood will go back and see if you need more of this FSH. Okay, nice. Now we're talking about luteinizing hormone. So we still have this whole ovary, uterus, whatever model that we're using. But yeah, so for luteinizing hormone, it also does a negative feedback mechanism where hypothalamus will release luteinizing hormone releasing factor to the anterior pituitary. Anterior pituitary sees this releasing factor. It'll release luteinizing hormone to your blood. The blood carries the luteinizing hormone to the ovaries and whatever, and it causes your egg to pop out of the Graafian follicle. Altogether, what I just said basically is that the follicle stimulating hormone, what we just talked about before, matures your egg, and the luteinizing hormone will tell the egg to pop out of the Graafian follicle. Okay, now we're going to talk about ACTH, which is adrenocorticotropic hormone. So I'm going to just call it ACTH. So ACTH releasing factor gets released from the hypothalamus to the anterior pituitary, which releases ACTH to your blood. That is a negative feedback mechanism. The blood carries your ACTH to your kidneys, specifically to the adrenal glands. Adrenal gland is made up of 2 sections. The outside is called the adrenal cortex, and the inside is called the adrenal medulla. Each part makes different hormones. But here we're going to be specifically talking about ACTH will bind to the adrenal cortex, the outside, which will release hormones when the ACTH tells it to. And later on in my notes, we're going to be talking about which hormones. So much hormones, okay. Okay, so remember before we said which hormones do hypothalamus make? So we said releasing factor, which is kind of what we've been talking about, because that goes to the anterior pituitary, and then we went into different ones that the anterior pituitary makes. But now, what are other hormones that the hypothalamus makes? It makes oxytocin, and it makes antidiuretic hormones. So oxytocin is the hormone that controls giving birth, which is your contracting of your uterus, and nursing, which is the release of milk when the baby pulls on the nipple. Okay, oxytocin does not follow a negative feedback mechanism. It follows a positive feedback mechanism, which is one thing causes something else, which causes the first thing, which causes the second thing, and it'll go back and forth until one of them stops. Okay, where does this come in? So right when a baby touches the cervix, meaning I don't know what it's called, but the thing fell, like the water broke, and then the baby's going to be sitting on the cervix. So a message goes to the brain And the hypothalamus sees this message and will release oxytocin, which causes the uterus to contract, which causes a message to the brain, and hypothalamus releases more oxytocin, which causes the uterus to contract, etc., 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 etc. Here we see a positive feedback mechanism, because one thing's causing the other, which is causing the other, so it's just a cycle. And it continues and continues. It stops, however, once the baby comes out, because there's no more nerve going to the brain, because the baby's not there, sitting on the cervix, so there's no more message. Okay, when you're nursing, how does the oxytocin come in? So when the baby sucks in your nipple, it sends a nerve message to the brain, and the hypothalamus sends oxytocin, which causes milk to be released from the milk glands, which are in your breast. So basically, and it's going to keep going as the baby's sucking, because nerve will go, and then it'll send more, and then it'll release milk, which will cause the baby to suck, and then whole cycle until the baby stops sucking, I guess. Okay. Prolactin. There's so much. Okay. Prolactin is produced by the anterior pituitary. So we kind of went back and we did stuff that are made by hypothalamus, but now we're back to the anterior pituitary. Okay. I'm going to take a pause on prolactin and just give a little background. So mammary glands are exocrine glands. It has a duct. It makes the milk, so when the baby sucks, the milk will come out. If you're nursing, your uterus will be contracting because oxytocin is responsible for the release of milk, but it is also responsible for the uterus contracting and uterus to go back to its original size way faster than if you didn't nurse. That is so random. It doesn't really have to do with prolactin, but I guess it does. Whatever. So I said that really fast, but basically they're connected, because if oxytocin is released, then the uterus will contract, and yeah, so if you're nursing, then your uterus is also going to contract, making it go back to its regular size faster than if you didn't nurse. Anyways, what is prolactin? Prolactin is the hormone that causes the milk production. So we said oxytocin was in charge of the milk release. I don't know the word that I used. Yeah, I guess, whatever. But prolactin is in charge of the milk production. The body produces more prolactin. If the body produces more prolactin, the more the baby sucks on the nipple, because when it sucks, the more the baby sucks on the nipple, the body will produce more prolactin, because when it sucks, the message goes to the brain to tell it to release prolactin. Once the baby, and then it'll make milk. Kind of, you get it? Okay. Once the baby stops sucking, it will stop prolactin to be produced. Yeah, prolactin does a positive feedback mechanism, because again, one thing's causing another, which is causing another. Okay. Thyroid gland. Thyroid gland produces a hormone called thyroxine, which we talked about before, but we didn't really go into specifics. What does thyroxine do? It controls the speed rate of metabolism, which is total of all your life functions at the same time. So thyroxine controls how fast all the functions work, like digestive system, circulatory system, etc. The more thyroxine you have, the faster your metabolism will work. If you don't have enough thyroxine, everything will go slower, so you'll be tired, you'll gain weight, etc. If you ever have a hormone problem, this is kind of a general thing, or you want to know if you do have a hormone problem, you're going to take a blood test, because hormones again are in your blood. So if you see you're low on thyroxine, which by the way, hypo means you have too little of a hormone, and hyper means you have too much. So if you have hypothyroxine, I think that's how you say it, you will take a thyroxine pill, and it takes a while for it to work, but you will stop being tired and whatever. Okay, in order to have a natural amount of thyroxine, a good amount in your body without taking this pill, obviously, you need to have enough iodine, which is a vitamin, in your diet. Iodine is in fish, tuna, salmon, etc., which is fish, but I'm saying certain fish. Okay, this is pretty random. A lot of America is overweight because we don't have a lot of fish, so they started putting iodine in salt. So yeah, thyroxine uses a negative feedback mechanism, which is the whole thing where it'll from the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus will send a releasing factor, but which releasing factor? It'll release TSH. TSH will go through your blood to the thyroid gland, and then the thyroid gland will release its thing, which is thyroxine. But if you don't have enough iodine in your diet, when the TSH comes to your thyroid gland, it'll be like, nice, I need to make it, but I'm not going to make it because I don't have enough iodine. So your hypothalamus will keep seeing not enough thyroxine in your blood. It'll keep sending more TSH, which is going to keep telling your thyroid gland, come on, we need to make this. And your thyroid gland will be like, nice, but I'm not making it because I don't have enough iodine. So what will it do in response? It'll be like, okay, maybe if I grow bigger, my new cells, when I grow bigger, the new cells that I make will be able to make it, even though we don't have iodine. It doesn't really make sense, but it does that. So it's going to grow bigger, and it's going to keep growing bigger and bigger, and you will get a goiter, which is like this big thing as a result of this. Okay, I just said so much. I just need to see. Oh yeah, so if it gets too big, if your goiter gets too big, the trachea won't have enough room, so a doctor will cut out the goiter, and therefore, it'll cut out your thyroid gland, which is the goiter, and then you have to take thyroxine pills because you don't have a goiter to make thyroxine. I meant you don't have a thyroid to make thyroxine. Okay. Now we're going to be talking about a parathyroid gland, which produces parathormone. I don't know. Okay. So we have a trachea, and then we have a thyroid gland on the trachea. And each of the 4 spots on the thyroid gland, which I don't know if you have a model, but whatever, is called a parathyroid gland. So you have 4 of them. It produces parathormone. If you don't have enough calcium in your diet, what does calcium do, by the way? It controls muscle motion. So if you don't have enough calcium in your diet, parathyroids will... these parathyroids, these glands, will release parathormone into your blood, and it'll bind with your bones, making them self-digest. Why? Because it's going to break itself down because you have calcium in your bones. So if you don't have enough calcium in your diet and you're not having enough calcium and your body sees you need more calcium, your parathyroid will send out parathormone, which will go to your bones. It'll break down the bones, like it'll cause the bones to self-digest, and calcium will come out. But this results in weak bones because it's breaking the bones down. So it's really not that good. So you should probably have some calcium in your diet. Okay, adrenal glands. We already talked about it before with the other stuff, but we're going to go more in detail with it. So it has adrenal medulla. Adrenal medulla produces adrenaline, which is also known as epinephrine, which causes your heart to beat faster, your sugar levels to go up, and everything to go very, very fast. It's in charge of your basically fight or flight reaction. Example, you see a bear, your heartbeat will go up, your temperature will go up, your dilation in your eyes will go up, your sugar level will go up, and everything. So that was adrenal medulla. That produces adrenaline and epinephrine, which is a stress hormone, by the way. Like, I think because it causes, I don't know. Okay. Adrenal cortex will release ACTH, which we talked about before, which goes, adrenal cortex does not produce ACTH. Sorry, I take that back. ACTH is made by the anterior pituitary gland, which is why we talked about it before. And we said that the ACTH comes to your adrenal cortex, and it tells it to release its hormone. That's what we said before. And now we're talking about what is the adrenal cortex's hormone. It is cortisol, which takes the amino acids in your body and it converts it to glucose. And it makes your sugar level go up because it's making more glucose from amino acids. Okay. Pancreas. What is pancreas? We talked about it with the digestive system. So it's embedded. Embedded in your pancreas is 2 batches of cells. One is alpha and the second is beta. They both secrete hormones, and they are antagonistic of each other. So the alpha cells release glucagon, and your beta cells release insulin. The receptor cells for these are on your liver, so they'll both go to your liver. Anyways, so insulin, we're just talking about first, takes glucose from your body, and it makes the liver store it as a polysaccharide called glycogen. So it'll take glucose and makes the liver store it as glycogen. Glucagon. Hold on. Yeah, glucagon. Yeah, the hormone glucagon takes the glycogen and breaks it down to glucose. So it takes the glycogen that was in your liver and it breaks it down to glucose. So basically, all in all, insulin takes glucose and stores it in the liver. It makes the liver store it as glycogen, and glucagon takes the glycogen that was in your liver and it breaks it down into glucose. So it's opposite each other basically, because it depends what you need. Okay, almost done. Okay, your thymus. I don't know why I said that weird. Okay, it's right on top of your heart. It produces a hormone called thymosin. Thymosin allows immature white cells to mature into killer T cells, which are called T cells because it's matured in the thymus. White cells are always called certain names based on where they mature. So these mature in your thymus, so it's called T cells. Okay, the actual cell though is made in your bone marrow, but so the white blood cell that was made in your bone marrow will come to your thymus and it'll mature there as a T cell. Okay, this follows a positive feedback mechanism because, yeah, one causes the other. Okay, gonads. It's different in different genders. Those are your sex glands. So female sex glands are your ovaries, and you have two of them. They are under the control of FSH and LH, which we talked about already. But the ovary itself produces two hormones which are in charge of your menstrual cycle. It produces estrogen and progesterone. Progesterone? I don't know how to say it. Which are both steroids, which is hormones that are not peptide-based, but they're lipid-based. All the hormones that we talked about before are peptide-based, meaning like they're built with peptide, I guess. But this is lipid-based, specifically saturated fats. So that's why we kind of really need to eat saturated fats. So yeah. Okay. Both hormones, estrogen and progesterone, whatever. Both of the hormones' job is to control your menstrual cycle, and they're in charge of your secondary sexual characteristics. Your primary sexual characteristics is, in a female would be like vagina and your ovaries, I guess. But the secondary comes after puberty, so it's your breasts, it's development of your waist, etc. Okay. Males produce a hormone called testosterone, which is also a steroid. Their gonads are their testes. Testosterone is, so testosterone is involved in sperm production. And male secondary sexual characteristics, which also come out in male puberty, which is deep voice, body and facial hair, triangular shaped body, etc. Women and men both produce a tiny bit of testosterone in their adrenal gland. Athletes who take fake injections of testosterone will grow more strong. It's dangerous because since it's a negative feedback mechanism, your body will see tons of testosterone and it won't make any more. And so for men, you're not going to be able to make sperm because that's what testosterone does. And for girls, it's not good because your voice will start deepening and you'll get facial hair and your menstrual cycle will stop, which makes you not be able to have a baby. And your body will start growing kind of like a boy. Okay, this was a 25-minute video.